Slept better than yesterday, but the daggone dog is part of the equation. So he's used to waking up at 5. So round 5, his ass gets up and he makes a lot of noise. And it's not like he doesn't bark, but he'll like clack his teeth. He like sucks on his like jowls. Or he'll itch or he'll shake. And so I ended up kind of getting awoken at like 5:30, and then he was just like, "All right, it's time to go outside." Oh, so I gotta get him squared away too. There's a lot of work to sleeping in an extra hour. I wasn't really anticipating there being a lot of work, but there's a lot of work. Such is life. Anyway, um, today is the second stanza of the Art of Peace, and I made the title today, The Difference Between Training and Practice. So, as always, we'll read the stanza, and then we'll do a practice, and then we'll discuss it a little bit. So here's the stanza. Now this is language that originated from 1883 to 1969. So this language is attempting to articulate life being really, really good in simple words. It's attempting to articulate a spiritual aspect of the human experience without giving it a religious quality. Okay, so that's one thing to keep in mind about the language. So here's what I mean. One does not need buildings, money, power, or status to practice the art of peace. Heaven is right where you are standing, and that is the place to practice. So heaven is right where you are standing. What that's attempting to articulate is that life is as good as you can make it, and that you can create an environment that has heavenly qualities in your normal life. An environment of heavenly qualities is an environment that's full of joy and wonder and awe and all the things that we often associate with heaven, but we use heaven and we often associate that with religion. There's not an attempt to do that there. There's an attempt to have religion be something else, but the art of peace be this practice. Okay, so that's important. So that's just throw that word out there. So let's settle in on that. The notion that it's right now, that right where we are right now is where the training always exists, and that when you are practicing, you can cultivate an experience that is like heaven on earth. That seems far-fetched maybe, but it's true. It's absolutely true. Just imagine if your mind spent the same amount of time it spent analyzing your trauma, analyzing your stressors, worrying about your stressors, anticipating your stressors, feeling shame about your stressors, anger. Imagine if all that time was spent cultivating present tense awareness and smoother interactions with everything that shows up inside yourself. Just imagine what that would look like. I'll tell you what it would look like. It would look like heaven on earth. Settle bell. Find your seat, find your seat, find your seat. Sight, sound, taste, touch, smell. Get to the body, feet, pelvis, core, heart space, throat, top of the head, breathing. Big ins, big outs. Focus on breath. Stillness, 2 minutes. So, another way I have adapted the second stanza is just by calling it or describing it as this: there's nothing special that you need to begin practicing. So here's the difference, and here's what you're going to have to contend with. All your life you've been training. And so the difference between training and practice is a big deal. So all your life you've been training. And what have you been training for? You've been training to meet a standard. And the standard that you have to meet is the standard that must be maintained in order to keep the military at its highest levels of readiness and professionalism. So you've had to meet standards. So that's training. Okay? Practice is without a standard. Practice is with the standard you set. Training is set by someone else. Practice is what you set. And so the training, the practice of the art of peace is all a matter of adequately understanding and developing your internal awareness. And internal awareness is the piece of the puzzle that solves problems before they become big. You can solve. That's what the art of peace is all about. It's about solving problems before they become big. And the place you solve the problem first is inside. And once you can solve the problem inside, then whatever shows up outside is less of an issue. Now, the challenge that we face as warriors is that we've all been trained to meet a standard. And by virtue of the fact that our brains are plastic or adaptable, and by that I mean they can adapt to anything, and then they build ways to make whatever we do regularly happen more easily and more quickly, because we've been trained and because we've been enculturated by the military, our understanding of our best is built on an external source, so an external standard. Art of Peace is not that. You are the standard. You decide. You make the choice. And the question that you got to ask yourself is, well, how do I decide what's what, or what's the right thing to do? Well, that's where the Art of Peace practice comes in. Like, this 114 weeks is going to give you that understanding. Then the way it works is I'm literally going to explain to you over and over and over again what it means to have internal awareness. Like, true internal awareness is the type of awareness that is available no matter what's showing up. You can be having a panic attack and internal awareness is there. You can recognize the steps that lead to a panic attack and start hitting it on step 1 and 2. You can start establishing a relationship to your internal environment where it's no longer how do I protect myself from when I fall apart or get triggered, but how do I cultivate the very best versions of myself? So that's the difference between training. Training is someone else's standard. Practice is your standard. So cultivating a practice that is your standard requires nothing. You require nothing to do this, not a thing. And it's arguably the most powerful thing that you could cultivate. So you don't require anything to do it. The difference between practice and training is that practice is on you. Training is someone else's standard. And the second stanza of the Art of Peace articulates that you need nothing special to train. So, let's leave it at that. Talk to me. I want to talk about this with you. So, questions, comments, bitches, gripes, complaints, suggestions, fire away. We're going to be at this for 23 weeks on just the Art of Peace practice, but then we're looking at 2 years. Like, you think about 2 years, and what happens after 2 years? No idea. What we're doing right now, what's happening right now, is everything's kind of falling apart. All the structures that have been kind of established and squared away are falling apart. And they're falling apart at very, very fundamental levels, like the level of school, stuff like that. Kids going to school, people traveling, people going to places. All that stuff that we thought we kind of had squared away in the beginning of the pandemic is now like 10 times worse. So what we're working with now is the beginning of the end and the beginning of the beginning, right? We're in the middle of the end. Whatever the old paradigm was that was built off of the structure that structure has just gotten eaten by COVID. And so we're going to have to recreate the structure once we're in a safer place, but we're not in a safer place, and we're in a place that's gotten even worse. So now's the time to buckle down and get a hold of your internal world. Your internal environment is the environment that you want to be cultivating. And here's why. I mean, this is the deal. Heaven is right where you are standing. Heaven's right where you are standing.